Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast, the sister brand of Subtle Asian Real Estate, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry. We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors. I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee. We're both real estate agents and investors based in the Bay Area and New York City. Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here. So pour yourself a glass of wine or boba tea and join us as we celebrate the achievements and unleash the untapped potential of AAPI women in the real estate industry.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast.
Now let's get on with the show. But first, a word from one of our fabulous sponsors.
I came to the U.S. with nothing but $20 in my pocket and still managed to build a rental portfolio.
If you're a child of AAPI immigrants, I'm sure some version of that story sounds kind of familiar. Well, now you can do the same while still killing it at your demanding corporate job your immigrant parents probably encouraged, forced you to get through real estate syndications. Our friends at Cashflow Marketplace provided the first site that allows you to view GP profiles with established track records. Read and even leave reviews of syndicators to build trust instantly. So leave the stress behind. Passively invest in a multifamily portfolio while still enjoying passive income, steady cash flow, and tax benefits that come with real estate ownership. For more info, check out cashflowmarketplace.com. Now on to the show.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the SARE Ladies Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Anita Wong, and my co-host here is Tiffany Lee. If you are in the syndication sphere, you might know our guest well, Perry Zheng, who is the CEO and founder of Cashflow Portal. Say hi, Perry.
Hi, how's it going, everyone?
Hey.
Perry and I actually met in the middle of last year when I was deep in my syndication research phase, and Perry was gracious to have some one-on-one time with me and giving me some insights about guru groups, how to get into my first syndication deal, and something that really stuck with me. And I'll check with you whether this is still true or if I made this up or not. But I remember that you told me that if you invest in syndication, it's really, really hard not to get any money back on that. Do you still think that's true, Perry?
I still think that's true with one qualifier with the syndicators that I recommend.
Okay, all right. If he's on Perry's checklist, it's really hard to screw up. I will say that. Okay. For those of you that don't know Perry started working in tech and rose to the ranks of engineering manager at Lyft. His first dive into real estate started in investing in real estate single family homes until he accumulated about 7 of them and realized that working smarter, not harder, was a way to go. Also, I imagine managing that debt to income ratio in California was definitely a stretch. So you definitely had to repivot. So in 2018, he did his first multifamily syndication deal where he did 172 units in Dallas, then raised $3.5 million of that $4.3 million on that deal. And then with that, it came another 408 deal in 2020, another 236 in 2021, and 200. So how many do you have now, Perry?
Total? About 1,020 units.
All in Dallas?
They're all in DFW.
Wow.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Oh, wow. Okay. So as an engineer at Lyft and finding his own pain points with the syndication software he was using, Perry decided to create his own, and in 2021 used his own software to raise on that deal. And then after receiving great feedback, he decided to quit his job and apply to an incubator program at Y Combinator, where he raised $5 million. Of course, we all know of the notable alumni that came from YC, such as Airbnb, DoorDash, Coinbase, and now he has 30 employees at Cashflow Portal and now helps syndicators manage their deals and investors.
Impressive. Congratulations, Perry. That is a very impressive bio. Wait, do you mind telling us how old you are?
I'm 34.
Oh my gosh. That is cool. Wow. Okay, so you're those tech millennials, huh? We're all millennials here. So Perry, now that we got your professional bio out of the way, let's dive into your personal life. We know you're a first-gen immigrant who grew up in a hardworking family. How do you think your upbringing has influenced the way you do business, both in the syndication world and building out Cashflow Portal?
Yeah, good question. So a little bit of a background. I came to America when I was 11 years old. And so I do have the best balance of being able to understand Chinese and having Chinese values and be able to be basically American in the workforce. When it comes to Asian values, I still listen to Chinese music, like Asian food, hang out with Asian friends, and in terms of work ethic, that's still coming from my parents and being an immigrant. But building a company of meritocracy is very American. There's no nepotism. There's no like, oh, you're my friend, so you can, work at a company or whatnot. And so it's all based on merit at the company. So I think that's a good combination. Um, when I came, I lived in New York City for 2 years in a very humble apartment building. Then
What area in New York, Perry?
we live in the old Manhattan, Chinatown.
Oh, okay.
Not the
Nice.
Flushing Chinatown.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
In fact,
familiar. I grew up around there.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, it was the heydays of Broadway, East Broadway, that shopping center. Now, when I went back last year, I think it was like almost, definitely not what it used to be. Yeah.
Well, if you come back to New York, come back during the SARE New York City meetups because that's where we are. We're in Chinatown. Old
Ah,
school Chinatown. Yeah.
I see. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, going back still brought really good memories. And then we went to Augusta, Georgia. Then I went to Louisville, Kentucky for my senior year. And so I travel quite a bit. My parents own a Chinese restaurant, and they work really hard. They only have one day off during the whole year, Thanksgiving. So to this day, for Thanksgiving, we still travel. We take Thanksgiving seriously. We go on a vacation because
Aw.
that was the one day that we have free. So growing up, working hard was never like a value I needed to learn. I learned by emulating my parents. It's like, yeah, working hard, that's like the prerequisite. I don't know what else. What does it feel like to not work hard? I think what I had to learn is working smarter. Because my parents work really hard. At the end, they have a small family restaurant. And I told them that even when I was a kid, I want to scale. We see all this like Panda Express, McDonald's, down the block. I was like super young. And I was like, why couldn't we scale? They're like, we don't know how to scale and whatnot. So that's already deep in my head that one day I do want to create a company. And so I think that kind of play a role in the many companies I worked at, which is not to try to climb the corporate ladder per se, but to learn the skill set that I needed to finally start a company. So I wanted to learn about product. I learned about engineering. I learned about managing teams. And then that's all necessary skill sets to start a company. So
Yeah.
in
That
terms
really,
of skill
I just
set,
want to jump in, right? That really
go ahead.
resonates. And Anita, I like jump in because I know, Anita, your family, but your parents were business owners, entrepreneurs for a long time too. So you can kind of relate to that story. But I can say from personal experience growing up, what your parents taught you was something that my dad instilled in me when I was like a college intern. He was just like, learn every single possible job so that you're indisposable and you don't need to rely on other people. But I think that's like a double-edged sword, right? Because now you're like too self-reliant, and that's where that inability to scale also comes from, right? It's like, oh, I could just do it myself. Why do I need other people to do it, right? So it's a hidden thing that you don't see. So I just wanted to jump in and add that little piece there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I was growing up, I guess even today, I live with three kind of principles in my life. One is being competent. The other one is don't be afraid. And then the third one is be kind. So don't suck. Don't be afraid, and don't be an asshole. I think both my parents are super super kind. My friends say they are like the nicest people that I ever met. And yeah, when I came home, I never really talked back of my friends. It's always like, this friend has this talent that I don't have. That friend was doing that thing really well. I want to emulate that. It's never about, oh, this person is not good, that person is not good. So I guess that's kind of like the intrinsic values that I got from my household. Being competent is the part that I learned later on in life. I think they're hardworking. I don't necessarily think my parents know the know-hows. And from a philosophical level, it felt like America is this unknown world to them. And because they don't speak much English, they felt flimsy in their existence in America. So they just want to do well on their little piece and not, like try to conquer, so that feeling of suppression is very real. They're like,
That
we just want to do our job.
Yeah, that gave me chills because I literally during Chinese New Year, it was our family get together, and my uncle said to me, he was like, if my English was better, or I felt more confident in my English, I could have done so much more in America, but I felt like that limited me, and it made me really sad, right? Because in a way, that was like what they thought was their kryptonite, and so they raised the next generation to be very fluent in English. And now for me, I feel like I've lost touch with my Chinese heritage because now I have like very fluent English and my Chinese is very clunky, and they'll make fun of me when I try to speak Cantonese because it just sounds like I just sound like a toddler. So, yeah.
I think the older generation also equate ability to speak English as being made it. It's like, okay, I can speak English, I can do anything. But just because someone can speak English doesn't mean they understand the nuances of American culture or understand how, people operate in America, right? And what values they have. And so that's something I learned after I graduated, joined the workforce. It's a lot based on meritocracy. So there's that. The second one is being afraid. So my mom is someone that's constantly worried for good reasons. And as Asian parents, they want me to be happy. So it made it difficult to quit my job, as an example, because that's secure and comfort. And that's also something I had to learn by just kind of projecting myself forward and just being a little bit fearless. Now, one really good trait that I think play a huge role in the startup life is it turned out that being the founder of a early startup where you do not have product market fit is basically the immigrant story, because nobody really believes in you. You are constantly, constrained by time and talent, and you just try to make something, make a dent, in the company and so on. So it's like, yeah, you have nothing to lose. And the reason I could quit my job and decided to do a startup is, yeah, I came from not much. So even if this thing fails, I don't take my job, I live for granted. I could go back to nothing and I will survive. And so that it depends on how you interpret it. And so the way I interpret it is, yeah, I came from nothing. I don't mind going back to nothing. So
That's very
I love that.
inspirational. Yeah.
Like Tiffany said earlier, my dad also had a startup. He was in the semiconductor industry. And so but I like that you're saying that it's like being a startup is basically immigrant mentality, when most immigrants are kind of phobic of it because maybe they're like, I already go through it on a day-to-day level. Like I don't need to also deal with it on a business level. But I think it's like my dad always says, I mean, there was so my father fled from China and he swam across the channel to New York, to Hong Kong as a refugee. And there was a time where he was actually jailed for a year. And then
wow.
so when he was like, I mean, there was years, multiple years where he wasn't making any money from his company. And he said, it there's nothing to be afraid of because there's nothing crappier than going back to jail and sharing sharing a jail cell with 20 other Chinese people with absolutely no money and no hope. And I think that's like so encouraging that it's just like you see like your pain just it motivates you and encourages you, and that story, the immigrant story of like, I my what do you call it? What's the pawn in Chinese checkers? Like when you cross the river and you can never go back. There's a term for it, but that's what my dad calls himself. Anyway, so he's
And
he's
yeah,
just like
yeah. There's no backtracking anymore. Yeah,
And
this
that
there's
is
no
literally
backtrack.
because he swam across a channel too.
Exactly. Once you go
Yeah.
once you go across the river, there's absolutely no going backwards because you've already kind of seen what the backwards really already looks like. So I love that.
yeah. Being
Yeah.
immigrant gives you perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think it's kind of like a gift to know what it looks like or feels like to be at rock bottom because
Mhm.
you know you have the capability to rebuild if you ever go back there. Like you can take more punches and it makes you more resilient.
Mhm.
All right,
Well, okay,
that's yeah.
maybe a quick question then. Do you think that rich kids can have startups? Yes.
I think I do think so, and it depends on the value they teach. I think there was a book about kind of um the U curve where the x-axis is the amount of income you have, and then the y-axis is the difficulty in raising your kids. And so if you're at the very bottom of the income bracket, it's very difficult because of necessity, and then it kind of goes down because you're like middle class. And then if you're the ultra wealthy, like yeah, like it's gonna be very, very difficult as well because your kid's gonna ask you, hey, my friends are flying private jets. Why don't you, also like take me to this item? And you go on vacations on fancy items. It's really hard to develop that perspective. My best friend in college was also a immigrant, and he got into Stanford and MIT, and he chose MIT because Stanford reminded them of good weather in California, and that didn't teach him the hardship of life. That was the
Mm.
reason he chose MIT. I mean, okay, those are amazing universities, but they're like, I want the chilly winter to teach me that life is not that like always that beautiful and idealistic. And so, yeah, for the super wealthy, I don't know what's like, but I
You
think
will
there is a
soon
way
though,
to-
Perry. You will soon. One day. You'll
yeah,
get there. You'll tell us how it is when you get there. So it's like a bell curve, right? Like
yeah,
yep. Cool.
yeah.
All right, that's a great segue to our next question.
Mhm.
Do you ever feel like your Asian outlook and philosophy has caused any misunderstandings in American or Western corporate culture? And give us some examples.
Yeah. Any misunderstandings in American corporate culture? So I will say, I also have direct reports that were immigrants, and I in thankfully in tech companies there were actually a lot of immigrants, right? Um, and so I feel like I do have a easier time managing them because I kind of speak the same language. And one thing I do see the misunderstanding in boarding is they they are very almost kind of we, almost they look a little bit um not strong enough, and they don't have strong opinions in the workplace. They take whatever their manager says and they kind of implement it. And so it might come across as weak will that you don't have thoughts. Okay. And this actually is more prevalent with people that came from China for master's degree and graduated. And so I know very well that they are strong-willed. As soon as they, speak with their friends in Chinese, they're like super loud and energetic and so on. Like I love it. But then when they come to the workforce, they're insecure about their English. They're insecure about like what is this like overall American culture that I don't really fit in. So that's with the kind of the fresh come here for grad school. And then there is me who's like kind of grew up in came here when I was 11. Um and I think all of them have something in common is just because they appear quote unquote weak doesn't mean they are actually weak. I like to equate immigrants to like General Tso's chicken. So my parents own a restaurant. And if you don't know, General Tso's chicken is the most popular dish for American Chinese food. So that means if the American Chinese owner wants to do good business, they need to perfect that recipe because that's what everyone wants. And if that's good, it kind of carries over to the rest of the business. That's from the business mindset. So then we put the most emphasis into that recipe. So my dad always said when it's fried chicken, but you have to fry it extra hard. And so because by the time it's mixed with the sauce, if you don't fry it extra hard, then it becomes mushy by the time it's mixed with the sauce. So, what the world sees is this kind of like a sweet, tender, mushy General Tso's chicken. But what's actually happening is it's oil with hard work and tears underneath the hood. So, so that's what we do in the household. Like the fact that they even end up at like say Meta, Google, or Facebook is that they, pass all the obstacles in China, take the entrance test, did well, the like cream of the crop in their classes, came here not knowing anyone. Their parents probably had to pay for it with their Chinese, earnings, and then they end up here. And then they're not super. Meek is the word I was looking for, right? But they're not meek, and so that will be basically the biggest conflict of misunderstanding.
That's really great. And I think that's the Western corporate culture, right? Because you see a lot of Asians in the workforce, they'll keep their head down and they're the hardest working people there, but they won't toot their own horn. And you said something so interesting, and that's the humility, right? That's like ingrained into us as a virtue in East Asian culture. But in Western culture, it translates. The misunderstanding is you're meek, when really in our culture, we're being respectful, right? We're not being cocky or arrogant. And that's like in Western culture, they're like, you have no self-esteem. And you're like, I'm humble, right? And then what's another interesting thing that you said was that, a lot of Asian employees will just take what their managers say and just run with it without questioning it. And I think the parallel to that is the filial piety that comes with Confucian values, right? They're almost treating their work as if it's an extension of their family and the hierarchy there, right? It's like, respect your elders. Oh, he's my manager. I have to respect everything he says. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job or something, instead of like vocalizing their ideas and standing behind it. Because you speak up to your parents in a Chinese household, you're in trouble. So I think they like in the back of their mind that thought process is there, and it doesn't serve them well in a westernized corporate setting, right? So that is cool. I love that you brought up those points.
That's very well put. So in terms of the culture for the company that we build at Casual Portal, it's actually more American. I want them to speak up. I want them to challenge authority. And I think I personally challenge authority. And that's why I may have an easier time at work, because I challenge authority. So regardless of my manager, their ethnicity or whatnot, I challenge authority. It actually also brought out a super interesting point. So I was talking to folks in the venture world, and they say, Perry, if you want to be able to raise a lot of venture capital money, you have to brag more. I'm like, I hate bragging. Like when the Asian people hang out, we never ask like, oh, where do you work? We secretly like look them up on Facebook. Oh, they work at Goldman Sachs. Good job. And we don't even know like what school they are. We secretly stalk them. But when you see these, Americans hang out, they always brag about how awesome they are. Like they pump themselves up. And so it turned out that when we talk to the venture capital, better for worse, they are like pretty homogenous in their ethnic group, or relatively so, which is, for better for worse. But you have to prop yourself up. You have to talk about your accomplishments, because that's not considered as bragging. That's considered as normal, and that's considered as just like you are you, because they're very individualistic, and most of the time they do not get offended. So I will say, I will encourage the people in the, if you are immigrant or Asian, or just came here for college, whatnot, consider talking a little bit more about your accomplishments, because it may feel unnatural, but fake it until you make it. It's actually not that bad. People actually respect you for it.
That's great. So let's go on the flip side of that, because I think we covered a lot of ground on, what the disadvantages might have been. But let's bring it to a more positive flip side, right? How do you think our Asian cultural upbringing provides an edge for you when doing business? And what are some philosophies you've learned and kept near and dear to your own heart? And give us some examples.
Yeah. So being a immigrant myself, I care about other immigrants. So we decided very early on that we're gonna sponsor H-1Bs and green cards. Um, and even though, being a startup, we technically shouldn't be doing that, but that's something we give back. And then second is I think that there is unspeakable kinship when you are interacting with another Asian. And the fact that we have a pretty good presence in the coastal cities means that we have a easy time of hiring because there is a large presence already. So I'm grateful for that. I don't take that for granted, right? Um, we hire from all ethnicities, but it does seem that my friends are like that, and they refer their friends, so we do end up with a quiet uh uh a large percentage of Asians in our company. So I would say it makes it for easier hiring. It makes it for easier connection, um and also, you know I take pride in changing their mindset from this kind of agreeable employee to a disagreeable employee. I actually want more disagreeableness in the company. I want people to challenge authority, because only when you kind of like you end up with like on you end up with these rough rocks. It's only when you kind of like strike against each other, shake it up, cause some sparks, do you come up as diamonds. So I really think that Americans did it correctly by having a disagreeable culture. In fact, when I look at all the biggest companies like Stripe, people say, Stripe is not like, they're nice to each other. They don't have a culture of being unkind, but they have a culture of just like saying it as it is. That's a good culture. And so if you take all the other big companies, they also have that kind of culture. Apple, for example, as well, it has a culture of disagreeability, respectful disagreeability. So I take pride in changing immigrants' mindset from agreeable to disagreeable.
I love
Yeah, I
that.
like that a lot. I'm actually reading this book called Good Arguments by his name is Bo Seo, who is he's actually a Korean immigrant to Australia, but he's actually a two-time world champion for the debate stage, and so he was actually coaching the Harvard debate team. Anyway, something really that resonated, and I picked up that book because because of my Asianness and my femaleness also, it's sort of like I the thought of an argument is just like it makes me cringe, and there's this man who was like he was saying like what I did for a living was chasing the biggest disagreements around the world. He made a career out of it. And he talks about like having good arguments, right? It's like having a good argument is like the solid foundation of a good society to a productive society. And I would say that like he says like being too agreeable is actually like you give up too much of yourself. Like you almost fade into the background, you compromise, and it's self-sacrificing that where you almost disappear. And I think that's what I think
That's
about when you're talking about these Chinese immigrants or whoever that just come and assimilate here, just agree with things, but their personalities entirely disappear until they, become,
yeah.
Back to their communities and back who they are. So I really love that you're kind of integrating disagreements or good arguments, because I think that there is so much to be said in a good argument, that is then rather than agreements. So
See, Anita,
I'm
aren't you so glad that we argue all the time now?
I'm still working on the I'm just working on the good arguments. I don't think we're quite there yet, Tiffany.
Oh, you two have good chemistry. I can see.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Hey, we're going to take a little break, but in the meantime, here's a shameless plug for one of our amazing sponsors. What are your goals for the future? Whether it's starting a business, growing your investment portfolio, or securing your financial future, you need a lawyer on your side to protect your interests. With their expert knowledge and years of experience, a lawyer will help you navigate the complex legal landscape and ensure that your interests are protected every step of the way. So why wait? Start planning for your future today and contact the law office of Ronald Rohde. They will help you reach your investment goals. Trust us, your future self will thank you. Now on to the show.
So I'm going to circle back to about going back to Cashflow Portal a bit more of the business end. Can you tell us about Cashflow Portal and where you've seen the most impact that you guys had on the syndication world?
Yeah. So for the audience, Cashflow Portal is a YC-backed startup that helps general partners in a syndication manage their deals and investors. So if we don't have Cashflow Portal, then in order for the LPs to subscribe to a syndication deal, the GP has to send DocuSigns to them. They will sign it, they will countersign it, send emails with wire instructions, confirm the wire has been received through an email as well, and then keep track of everyone's address in the bank account on a Google spreadsheet. If the LP wants to change the address, they will go back to that spreadsheet and then change it. And so the LP also doesn't have a dashboard that can access all the documents and their text documents and so on. So if you're from the Silicon Valley, Cashflow Portal is like the Carta for real estate syndication. It's a equity or cap table management tool, right? So the value that we have about 650 customers now and tens of thousands of LPs, and the value is the GPs get their time back by having a back office that is easy to use. And so that's kind of the and this allows them to also come across as professional to their LPs.
You know what that reminds me of? Sorry, just to jump in. That is your extra crispy General Tso's chicken. That's your secret recipe.
Also, yeah.
But go on. I just wanted to add that in because I thought it was funny.
Also, I'm curious.
So can you tell us a bit about some of the shifts you've been seeing in the syndication space, and how do you predict the industry will go in 2023?
So Cashflow Portal is a tool that helps GPs manage their deals and investors. And I think we are more than just a simple tool. Like, we don't want to just be a SaaS company that like, okay, cool, you can help me, manage. Because that's like QuickBooks. That's Carta. That's great. We can be a very successful business on that. My journey is ever since I graduated, I worked at Amazon, Lyft, Twitter, and a company called PayScale. And they are either a social network or a marketplace. So I've been trained my entire life to think like a marketplace. And I do think that, marketplaces are taking over the world. If you look around, every service that we use is either a social network or a marketplace. Airbnb is one, DoorDash is one, Uber is one, Lyft is one. Amazon is one, and then there's Twitter, there's Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth. And so I guess my personality lends itself to being a mechanism designer. I like to design a fair, almost like an isolated world in which people interests are fundamentally aligned. And so that's where my passion is. And so that means I think within the real estate syndication space, which is a very new field, and people are skeptical. They're like, how do I trust this GP? How do I know my money wouldn't be lost? And so instead of me recommending you say, hey, trust me, we want to prove it with data. And so there are two ways to prove it with data. One is having a police where we are the police and check every background of GPs. The other way of checking it is let the voice of the people be the voice of God. That's, so let people be the participants in that voice. If there's a bad review, they can leave an anonymously bad review. I fundamentally believe that syndication is intrinsically a good thing because it's based on real estate. It's not investing with FTX because FTX takes the money. This is like Amazon. You write a review. Now you can say bad things about Amazon, Airbnb, and so on. But yeah, it does create value, right? It brings everyone's voice into a part of the equation. So in order for syndication to quote unquote blow up in a good way, it must have transparency and trust built into it. The reason that Airbnb succeeded is that they take care of the payment. They are the escrow account for payment, right? Because otherwise, the hostess and actually the CEO was, back then they were the traveler, and they were like touring New York, and every evening they forgot to go to the ATM machine, and then the host looked at them like, are these people scams or not? And so they went back there. We need payment because we need to be the middleman. So there are lots of ways to build trust, and I do think that marketplace is the future for real estate. So I very keen on that idea. I don't know, maybe we are 5 years ahead of our time, but that's fine.
I love that. As you were talking, the wheels were spinning in my head. Basically, your assessment of marketplace and how to really vet syndicators just pulled me back to what you said earlier about how you interact with other agents. I almost feel like the foundation of your business model is a manifestation, if you want to use that word, of your core values of, you do all the stalking beforehand, right? You're doing all the research, you're doing all the stalking, you're not letting them toot their own horn and say, oh, I'm so great, and basically con people with their own like inflated marketing spiel for themselves, right? You're basically saying, hey, here's the data. This all falls back into meritocracy, and the numbers don't lie, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're saying I'm using my creating the marketplace is almost a defense of immigrant culture.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Cream rises.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Someone's got to write an article about that.
We can write a whole book on this, Anita. This is our book topic.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question. So who do you think is doing some really exciting work in real estate right now? Or do you have any case studies that you've seen that others do that others should copy or perhaps look into?
Yeah, good question. I think I like missionary companies that, so I respect SARE a lot because their mission is to help someone go from 0 to 1, right? That's a noble mission. And I love how contagious their energy is and how they truly want to help the community. So that's a great example. And so, we have a great partnership with SARE and so on. And then the other one is, I think that goes back into the kind of the marketplace. I do believe, so Casual Portal is one website, casualportal.com. We actually have another website called casualmarketplace.com, and that's the target audience is the LPs. They can go on there, they can search for GPs, they can view their track record, they can look at their reviews. Now, the reason there are two different websites is that you don't want to put the marketplace in a tool, right? Because then if the GPs are paying, they're like, I don't want my LPs to come to this website and seeing a bunch of other GPs. This is my tool. This is my private space. So it has to be two different websites. So, Airbnb didn't have that problem. Amazon didn't have that problem. So I feel like if we project ourselves 5 years from now, whoever can solve the accountability and transparency problem within real estate, they should be the next Robinhood or Airbnb, because everyone wants to invest in real estate. There's if you take 100 people, what do they want to be, when they want to invest? They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do some trading, day trading. Once I have enough money, then I will go into real estate. That's what everyone says, right? And investing in real estate is sexy. They're like, oh, you have money, that's why you invest in real estate. And there are ways to invest. You can say like invest $5 in some exchange, and then, but technically you're not really investing with a GP. The website is the GP, so you're investing with one person. So we want to say, no, instead of investing with one person, I want to have the option of investing with hundreds of GPs that I can pick and choose from, right? That's essentially a marketplace. It's a much, much harder problem. Yeah, so maybe this is a little bit self-serving, but I think of cash flow portal only solving half of the equation. Our ultimate goal is to build a marketplace. And I can guarantee the last couple years, we have been passionate about marketplace for so long. And the traction is not that good. And so it's not an easy problem to solve. Um, there's a level of sophistication we need in order to build trust, in order for the LPs to take a step at it. So it might take about 5 years, but intrinsically, I think that's fundamentally good for the world.
So I and maybe this is and I just want to talk about like trust and do you have I mean, I suppose like in the marketplace, you have to have a certain criteria of GPs that are trustworthy. How do you suss out those? Like, is it really just by the numbers they're outputting or perhaps their brand? I mean, how do you pick and choose to create this marketplace of trust so that when people log on and just say that anyone here is trustworthy, or do they make that decision for themselves?
Yeah, good question. So in order for them to be listed there, they have to be a cash flow portal customer. So that we know they have put in their payment information and that their entity is correct. Because in order for them to do distributions, they verify their bank account and they verify their EIN number and they verify their articles of registration. So that's there, and they pay for it. And we watch that people go in and create, and invest 50,000, 100,000. So we know if someone actually invested. To build a marketplace, according to YC, is that you either need the supply already or you need the demand already. So thankfully, we have the supply, and that's the tool. The tool gives us the supply, which is half of the equation. I could have taken now from that point on, we could have taken the approach that we as the platform will check if what they claim their track record is actually correct. Or we say that we are not going to claim that. We are letting the people who actually kind of interview them or talk to them or their future investors be the judge and leave a review. So there is a spectrum, and I feel like if we take on the position that these are all trusted GPs, which I don't think every GP in the world is trustworthy. I don't hold that position. I think out of 100 people, you're gonna make money with 80% of them, and the 10% of them you're gonna make extraordinary amount of money, and at the other 10% you might break even or lose a little bit of money. But I don't think you will lose all of the money, right?
It's that bell curve again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that sometimes the LP are like, if I invest 50K, how do I know they're not gonna take the money and run away, right? That is a problem that can be solved with technology. So, for example, we can say if you're raising money on the marketplace, you must use our bank, our software layer control bank. So you cannot just take money out, right away. Or the money goes to our escrow, it stays in the escrow. You can withdraw any time, but it will be subject to some limits and so on. So all of that, it's taking a lot of the things from the successful marketplaces of the world and then applying it to real estate. And the fundamental thing is it worth applying to real estate? And I do think that it's worth applying to real estate.
That's awesome. I love that you're a tech disruptor in the real estate space, because I feel like a lot of elements of the real estate industry are still dinosaurs, right? So there's apt space for tech to really, fill in the blanks of things that were just there's so many leaks and like risky things that can happen in a deal. And I'm speaking of this from like a brokerage standpoint. Like there's just there's sometimes a very concerning lack of transparency, right? That compromises a lot of things. So I like the the integration of more controls into the system so that everyone is playing a lot safer. That's cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for all of your insights. And it was really, I think I like how I'm gonna call this General So's something with
that's the name of the episode. General So's cash flow portal.
Working title. But thank you so much for your insights. And how can our listeners find you? They want to reach
Yeah.
out.
If you want to email me, you can email me at perry@cashflowportal.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you want to check out the Cashflow Marketplace, go to cashflowmarketplace.com, especially if the folks listening are LPs. And just give us feedback, because I think I think I really want to make it work.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're definitely rooting for you for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank
Getting
you,
to that
Perry.
10%. All right. Bye. Thanks, Perry.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Here's one last note from our lovely sponsors.
Hey, SARE ladies, listeners, Tony the CPA dude here, also your resident SARE tax bro. And with your lovely host, they came up with some great ideas. So Miss Tiffany and Miss Anita here came up with the tax workout plan. So we're gonna help you get cut up on your taxes, also gonna help you cut up on your own body. So just like working out, taxes is a monthly thing. You can't ignore it, otherwise you're gonna fall off the cliff. So with the code SARE ladies, we're gonna give you a nice healthy discount, and we're also gonna give the SARE ladies a kickback just to help support their podcast. I've had a fun time being on their podcast a couple times this year. They've done great. I really wanna see them blow up in 2023. So with your support with this creative tax workout plan and also a workout plan in general, we're gonna help you transform your life in 2023. So mention the code SARE ladies when you talk to me. You can email me at Tony@thecpadude. Text me at 928CPA-dude. TikTok's the CPA Dude. Website's thecpadude.com. Everything's the CPA Dude. So SARE Ladies is your special code here, and let's make this year great.
Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies podcast hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee. Special thanks to Subtle Asian Real Estate, LLC, our parent company.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram at Subtle Real Estate. You can also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.